Good afternoon. This is the Torah on Parashat Pinchas. The previous Parsha ended on a very dramatic note, Parshas Balach, where the Jewish people were sitting with the women of Midian. In fact, 24,000 people were killed. Now, not all of them were participating in immoral acts with the Midianite women and idol worship, but the rest were killed because they didn't stop the ones who did. And Pinchas, after Moshe told his mother, tell him must stop, Pinchas, going totally against his nature, picks up a spear, kills Zimri and Cosby. Zimri was one of the princes of the tribe of Shimon, and Cosby was one of the princesses of the Midianites. And a miracle even occurred there. They should have been instantly killed by the spear he ran through the both of them. However, they lived long enough that until they threw him on the ground, they were still alive, so he wouldn't become spiritually impure from their death. This week's Parsha begins on a note of God giving Pinchas two rewards, which I'm going to get into in more detail. One, he made him a Kohen. The second one is he gave him the covenant of Shalom, peace, which we'll also be coming back to. The Parsha then goes on to take a census of everybody, all the military-age men, 20 to 60 of the 12 tribes, not including Levi, because they weren't going to get a portion in the land. They then go into the laws of inheritance. It then goes into the laws of inheritance, how the land will be divided once it's conquered, the land of Eretz Israel. Then God tells Moshe, "You're not going to be going into Canaan," and he says, "Will the people be like a sheep without a shepherd?" And he says, "No," and he tells him to anoint and put his hands on Yeshua in front of the entire people. The Parsha then goes on to describe all the korbanot that are going to be offered on the different yontifs. Now, going back to the incident of Pinchas with Zimri and Cosby, it can be understood on a number of different levels. And the interesting thing at the beginning of the Parsha, if one looks at the second pasuk, well, the first pasuk is the first pasuk is talking about him getting the Kohen status, and pasuk 12, third pasuk says, "Noten lo brit shalom," and therefore Hashem said, "I will give him my covenant of peace." And then it goes on to say, "V'haisa lo zarato akra brit kunat olam takat asher kina Elohav the kippah al bnei Israel, and it shall be for him and his offspring after the covenant of eternal priesthood, because he took vengeance for his God, and he atoned for the children of Israel." Now, I have there's a few questions on this. Why would somebody get a covenant of peace, of shalom, if just to killing people, even if it stopped the plague? That's one question. Also, a second question is, if one looks at the word shalom, the vav in the Chumash in the Torah is split in the middle, which means it can be read as a yud, which would mean it would be shalom, complete. If it's read as a vav, it means shalom. So in a sense, he was getting both. Pinchas was going to get both of those. Now, on a simple level, it's understood that the covenant of peace was dealing with the fact that the whole tribe of Shimon, nobody else would exact retribution on Pinchas. That's one level. It can be understood at a more surface level. another level, and this was brought down by Rav Dean Steinsaltz, that by killing Zimri and Cosby and stopping the plague, he showed that the total only loyalty of Bnei Israel is to Hashem and Hashem only, and therefore he brought the ultimate shalom by it, if you like, between Hashem and his people. Now, that's on two levels. A third level where it can be understood is, what is this concept of Shalim? And also, it's also going to help deal with another major question that appears in connection with Pinchas, that Pinchas and Eliyahu, in a sense, are the same person. Now, according to my teacher, Rav Uziel Malevsky, Zikron Tzaddik L'Bracha, he explained the following: that what is Shalem? Originally, people were not supposed to die. At the time of Adam and Chava, they were supposed to stay alive. Now, that in itself is interesting, but once we committed the sin with the eating of the Eitz Hadas of Tov and Ra, the snake's poison got into every human ever since, and the only way that poison can ultimately be, spiritual poison be removed, is through the person being nifted, dying. That even applies to such people as Moshe and Aaron, though their passing is on a very high spiritual level and totally painless. And what happens is, we're all made up, everything in the universe, including humans, are made up of four spiritual forces in different combinations. Spiritual earth, air, fire, and water. Those are kept out of balance, and therefore every person will ultimately die. What Hashem did here, he adjusted it and brought all of those spiritual forces in to balance. And therefore, by doing so, Pinchas would never die, or at least Pinchas Eliyahu combination, whatever. I'll explain that shortly. Now, that's understanding the word shalom as shalem. But what about the word shalom with the vav, as the word shein lamed vav mem, sofid, and based on the teachings of Shar Gugulim and of Megali Amukot, the parish by Rav Natan Shapiro, from the late 15, early 1600s, very big Rav. It goes like this. First of all, this Vav represents something deeper. It represents a brit. It represents all the crowns that Adam and Chava were supposed to get originally, which were corrupted because of the sin of eating of the Eitz Hadas and Tov and Ra. But this brit, this concept of a brit between God and man, originated at that time. That gift and that Vav was passed down to Abraham 20 generations later, and then passed by him to Yaakov. Now this Vav then this covenant of peace went to Yosef, and it talks about Moshe bringing up the bones of Yosef, and from there, the brit went to Moshe. Now, in this week's parsha, we know that Moshe's lifespan is very short. And what's going to happen here is it had to be passed to somebody. And you might think it will be passed to Yeshua, but no, instead it is passed to Pinchas. Now, we have to look at what Pinchas did here. What were the higher stakes going on in this whole incident with the Midianite women? And to do that, we have to go back a little and look last week at Bilam. Bilam wanted to curse us, but Hashem made us bless us. Now, as a rule, once somebody gets a blessing, it can't be retracted. So Balaam couldn't defeat us that way. So what did he and his two sons do? And his two sons' names are Eunice and Yombrus. And these are two very individual, interesting neshamas. How do we know? It says that in last week's Parsha, Balaam went with his two youths. Now, who were the two youths? They were his two sons. Where did they originate from? They originated from the era of Rav and the era, the mixed multitudes that came up. These two had the new powers of, I don't want to use the term magic, but the forces of Tumah to create things. And they were the ones who created the Egel Zahav, the golden calf. Moshe had them both killed after the incident of the Egel Zahav. However, they come back as Balaam's son. So really, even though the target here was Zimri and Cosby, the real battle on a deeper level was between Pinchas on one side and Balaam and his two sons on the other side. Now, he was a little outnumbered. So what happened then? Two neshamas came to assist him. Who were these two neshamas? They were Nadav and Abihu. Now, Nadav and Abihu were Aaron's two sons who offered fire they weren't supposed to. In a previous Devar Torah, I discussed all the reasons of why that happened and why they get such a punishment. But in any event, their neshamas were pure. In fact, according to some of the commentaries, they were at a higher level collectively than either Moshe or Aaron. Where did they originally come from? They originally were a Gilgul of Yissachar, one of Yaakov's sons, and they were really two heads of one neshama, of one body, and therefore there was no problem with them being together. And if it hadn't been, again, their sin wasn't such that they should have been, but as died, there was two reasons. One, Aaron still had a taint from being involved with the Egel Sahab, and so therefore they didn't get the protection they would have normally gotten through their father. And second of all, Hashem said he sanctifies the Mishkan through those who were close to him. What does that mean? What is the sanctification? The sanctification is showing that one must have great respect for the Mishkan. I'm present there, and even those closest to me, if they don't follow the rules, are going to suffer great consequences for it. So on that level, they were so elevated, they served that purpose. Now, so why did the two of them have to come down? The two of them had to come down because if they even up the battle between them and Balaam and his two sons, and that made it an equal battle. Now, it goes even one step further. So assisting them with the neshamas of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Abraham and Yaakov were on the right and left. In the middle was Yitzchak, who represents din, Gevurah, strict justice. And Pinchas needed that because of his nature. He was, on his mother's side, a descendant of Aaron HaKohen, whose whole thing was Shalom, quite the opposite of what happened here. And also, beyond Balaam and his two sons were the earthly representatives. On a higher spiritual level, the battle was going on against three evil angels, one of whom was Samael, we know as the Yetzer Hara, the evil side, Satan, and two others. And to counteract that, the three angels of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov had to come down and also got involved in this. And that was Michael and Raphael, another angel, and they were doing battle on that level. So with all of that, they finally defeated them, and that allowed Pinchas to stop the war, to stop the immorality, and bring them to completeness and save the people, and got us back right in Hashem's good will. And so what happened to Pinchas? Pinchas eventually had two other souls with him. Those were not of an Avihu. He was there as a Borim to assist him. Eventually, Eliyahu also becomes part of him. And this is why we talk about the Pinchas Eliyahu connection. In fact, one aspect of Eliyahu's Neshem Eliyahu from the tribe of Benjamin is the Eliyahu we think of that's going to goes back and forth, up and down, living and then going up to the upper world and down, who's doing all the miraculous things we talk about, like him attending every bris milah. And ultimately, there is an interesting tikkun here later on. The Pinchas Eliyahu have to confront the evil king on Mount Carmel, and who was there also with them, Eliyahu, was Nadav and Abihu, and by facing up to the evil queen, Jezebel, and defeating the evil priest of Avodah Zarah, Baal, Nadav and Abihu finally did a tikkun for what they did at the time of offering that strange fire incense. Again, the entire history of Pinchas and Eliyahu, I'm going to give as a separate Devar Torah. Needless to say, because of this, we were redeemed, we were saved. As we see, things are, Hashem's wisdom is on multiple and levels and generations. And part of this combination of these neshimas eventually is going to become Mashiach ben Yosef. In any event, even in today's strange events, when we see everything that is going on, we should realize there are multi-generational things in play by Hashem, and that we're heading for the ultimate redemption. Good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.